The comedian and political commentator John Fugelsang went on CNN and explained the brilliance of Jon Stewart and The Daily Show. Let's watch.
Earlier in the show, you said you think there's more real news on Jon Stewart's show than on the nightly newscast. So who would you nominate to replace him?
I don't know. I'm not
maybe Brian Williams?
in the person. It's been suggested.
I think this guy right here. I think Mr. Fugelsang. Well, what do you think? Do you think I'm onto something here that we needed The Daily Show to hold Fox News accountable?
Absolutely. Well, we need the regular media to hold Fox News accountable, in my opinion. I don't know why CNN doesn't go after them more.
I'm not holding CNN. The idea that Jon Stewart did only liberal-oriented stuff is wrong.
It is wrong.
And he went after the left. He went after political correctness.
But I would submit to you, Carl, that is liberal. Liberal is not defending the Democratic Party. It's going after all sides in power and questioning all authority.
Very often, the networks, he was hitting all around the infield and the outfield.
I thought there were times where he took cheap shots at CNN, but there were a lot of times where I found myself agreeing with him, and I think some of the bosses here did too. That was the genius of Jon Stewart. He was a media critic.
Yeah, and it's not that there's a liberal counterweight to Fox. John didn't go for liberals on the show. Liberals already get their news from a variety of sources. He went for the millions of Americans who identify with liberal positions but choose to not identify themselves as liberal. A 2012 Gallup poll showed that 77% of Americans support abortion rights in all or some cases, but only 43% want to call themselves pro-choice. And it's much the same with liberals in our society. The Fox News definition of the word has overtaken the dictionary definition of the word. So what Jon Stewart and The Daily Show did, along with Colbert, along with Maher, along with Wilmore, was reach out to those people who aren't necessarily news junkies, but who do agree with progressive taxation, with marriage equality, with not locking people up for smoking marijuana, and use entertainment first, preachiness last to make it a fun show, and that's the way you beat Fox News.
These guys have a function that's repertorial and keeping us to hopefully going more where we belong repertorial.
We're in an age where we trade information for access, and all too often in some media outlets, they don't want to ask the tough questions because they're afraid of losing the booking. By being a comedy show first, you can take those on because you care about the truth and getting the laugh more than getting the return booking. And that's why the show had so much power. That's why they were fearless.
John Fugelsang is 100% correct. And watching that made me wish that he gets a show either on CNN or maybe he replaces Jon Stewart. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who has paid his dues both comedically but also in the realm of political commentary. I mean, John Fugelsang is half me and Cenk Uygur and also half Jon Stewart and stand-up comic. So, I mean, he would be perfect for that job. But here's the thing. Old media has all these different biases, and they show in the most gross ways. I mean, one example is what we talk about all the time, this idea of a pro-establishment bias, how they are the establishment, and they're friends with the establishment, so the thought that they're going to hold the establishment accountable in any serious way, it's just not true. It's not going to happen. They also have, as John Fugelsang laid out so well there, a pro-access bias. And that idea is, well, I want to be the first one to get the news and report the news that Hillary Clinton is running for president in 2016. So let me do like 8 fluff pieces on her and her family, and then maybe she'll come to me because she knows I'm on their team. This is unfortunately what's happened with corporate media. That's another big issue, just the fact that media is corporate. I mean, when you look at independent outlets and you look at new media, you find just much better coverage and much better reporting and much more entertaining stuff. When you make anything this giant corporate machine, it always loses whatever touch makes it genuine and creative and unique. It becomes this huge machine that just spews out garbage on a daily basis. Then there's also, to continue to add on here, the pro-neutrality bias, which you always see on CNN, but you also see it on the nightly news, for example, where all you get is the people who are reporting the news trying to be kind, be both kind and give equal criticism to the Democrats and the Republicans. This way they can avoid getting any cries or claims of bias from both sides. So it's a way to kind of pander to get, a nod from the establishment that, oh, yes, you've done well by us by not actually giving a shit about objectivity and only caring about neutrality. And then naturally there's the sensationalism bias. It's why you always see the breaking news banner even when it's something that shouldn't be considered breaking news, because they're trying to get eyeballs on the screen however possible, so that means being sensationalistic. But to even break it down from a more broad perspective here, one of the reasons why Jon Stewart was so successful and CNN and MSNBC and all these mainstream media networks, by and large, they're failing, is because Jon Stewart is genuine, right? When you watch Jon Stewart, you know that this is what he does. He cares deeply about what he's doing. He's a comedic genius in the sense that he can take the news and put it through this comedic filter, and out the other end comes this beautiful product that makes people laugh, and also there's a lot of truth in it. But when you look at CNN and you look at MSNBC and you look at Fox News and you look at the nightly news, it's not genuine. This is the way to analyze the situation from the broadest perspective possible, putting aside all the other biases, the establishment bias, the access bias, the neutrality bias, the sensationalism bias. Put all that aside. Just look at it through that lens. Jon Stewart is genuine and he cares about what he's doing, and the hosts on CNN and MSNBC and the nightly news and Fox News, they're all cut from the same mold. They're all playing the same role. There is no generic Jon Stewart. It doesn't exist. You can't have a generic version of somebody that's so unique and such a creative individual, but you can have a generic news anchor man who always sits with perfect posture. Well, Scotty, tell me about the weather. I hear it's raining. And people look at that and they go, stop lying to me. Stop pretending like that's your voice. I know that's not your voice. Could you imagine if you were having a conversation with somebody on your couch watching a football game and they started speaking in the generic local news anchor voice or the nightly news voice? Look at Scott Pelley's the perfect example of this. Scott Pelley is one of the people, he does 60 Minutes and he does some other shows, and he's like, well, what would you say about this whole situation? Please tell me. Stop with your voice. That's not your real voice. That's not your real voice. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? The thought to a guy like Jon Stewart, the thought that somebody would say to him, like, go out there and put on your announcer voice. He'd be like, you're fired. Get the fuck out of here. What are you saying? You're telling me to not be myself, but go out on TV. So take my reputation and put it right in the fucking blender. Flush it right down the toilet. That's what you want me to do. Right? But this is all of mainstream media is the fake voice, is the fake posture, is the nonsense, 1950s airbrushed version of reality. And Jon Stewart is the exact opposite of that. Bill Maher is the exact opposite of that. New media is the exact opposite of that. And that's why we're going to win. And also, not only are they speaking truth to power and giving better news and information than the actual news channels, they also are representing a progressive viewpoint. But there's nothing like wrong about that or bad about that or biased about that, because in fact what that is Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert and Bill Maher, they're representing in many ways, not in every way, but in many ways, they're representing a majority of America. We've gone over the numbers before. Don't make me trot them out here again. 80% of the American people want to raise the minimum wage. 90% of the American people want a universal background check for gun purchases. Only 17% of the American people still want to be in Afghanistan. 60% of the American people say never cut Social Security under any circumstances, or Medicare or Medicaid. And the list goes on and on. On virtually every issue, raising taxes on the rich, you name the issue, I will show you how the American people are progressive. So with a guy like Jon Stewart, what you have is somebody who represents a majority of the American people, and he's also funny, and he's also giving you better news than the so-called news channels. That's why he's a success, and that's why CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and the nightly news can't compare with him and can't compete with him.